This girl uncovers the millionaire nanny's secret, a terrible thing no one expected, and moments later everyone is shocked by the revelation. Comment giving my story a score from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The glass slipped from Reginald Thorne's hands, shattering on the marble floor of his office, shards scattering like tiny diamonds under the afternoon light. His legs trembled, and he leaned on the mahogany desk, his face paling as he processed the words he'd just heard. On the other side of the glass door, little Hazel, just 4 years old, stood motionless on the sidewalk, her big, scared eyes fixed on him through the glass. The girl had whispered something that chilled the 52-year-old businessman to the bone. "Mister, the lady in your house is giving the boy bad medicine. She wants to hurt him." Reginald wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with his shirt sleeve. Hazel was one of the kids who hung around the downtown strip of Albany, always asking merchants for spare change. He'd known her for months, always giving her a few bucks when he saw her, but he never imagined she could have something so disturbing to tell him. The girl disappeared, running between the pedestrians on State Street before he could question her further. Beverly Jenkins, 45, had been taking care of Finn, his 7-year-old son, for 3 years. She had come into their lives when Reginald needed her most, shortly after losing his wife, Meredith, in a terrible accident. Beverly was an ordinary woman, born and raised in the South End neighborhood, who showed genuine affection for the boy. Finn had adapted well to her care, and Reginald considered the nanny almost a member of the family. How could a street kid make such a serious accusation against someone he trusted so much? During the drive back home, Reginald couldn't shake the desperate look in Hazel's eyes. There was something in her voice, an urgency that transcended her young age. When he arrived at his residence in the Pine Hills neighborhood, he found Beverly preparing an afternoon snack for Finn in the kitchen. The brown-haired woman, always with her hair up in a simple bun, smiled when she saw him, but Reginald noticed something different in her gestures. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred the chocolate milk for the boy. "How was Finn's day?" Reginald asked, watching Beverly's every move with an attention he had never shown before. "Good, Mr. Thorne. He ate a good lunch, did his homework, and now he's watching cartoons in the living room," she replied, but her voice sounded higher-pitched than usual. "He just had a little headache this afternoon, but I gave him the medicine the doctor prescribed." Reginald frowned. "What medicine? I don't remember us going to the doctor recently." Beverly hesitated for a moment, nervously twisting the dish towel in her hands. "Oh, don't you remember? It was last week when Finn was a little restless. The doctor said it was normal in children his age and prescribed a mild sedative." The businessman felt a chill down his spine. Finn hadn't been to any doctor last week, and he always attended all of his son's appointments. He tried to maintain his composure as a terrible suspicion grew in his chest. "Can I see the prescription?" "Sure, it's in my room. I'll get it now," Beverly said, leaving the kitchen with hasty steps. While he waited, Reginald observed the chocolate milk that Beverly had prepared. The brown liquid had a slightly different color than usual, with small specks that hadn't dissolved completely. His heart leaped when he noticed a small, unlabeled bottle partially hidden behind the sugar bowl. With trembling hands, he picked up the bottle and examined it. It contained an unidentified white powder. "Dad!" Finn's cheerful voice echoed from the living room. "Beverly made chocolate milk." Reginald ran to the living room and found his son sitting on the couch, about to bring the glass to his lips. "Wait, son. Let me try it first to see if it's not too hot," he said, taking the glass from the boy's small hands. Finn looked at him curiously. "But I always drink it like this, Dad. Beverly always gets the temperature just right." At that moment, Beverly returned from the kitchen without the promised prescription, and her face paled when she saw Reginald holding the glass. "Mr. Thorne, why don't you let Finn drink his chocolate milk? He's used to it." "Beverly, where's the prescription you went to get?" The nanny began to stammer, her words jumbling together. I can't find it right now, but I know it's there." It must have fallen behind the dresser. Reginald watched Beverly's behavior carefully and then looked at Finn. The boy seemed sleepier than usual for that time of afternoon, and his reactions were slower. How many times had he noticed this and attributed it to the natural fatigue of a child? How many times had Beverly given his son medicine without him knowing? "Finn, can you go play in your room for a little while?" "Dad needs to talk to Beverly," Reginald said, trying to keep his voice calm. After the boy left, the silence in the room was deafening. Beverly remained standing, wringing her hands nervously, while Reginald stared at her with a mixture of incredulity and growing horror. Could the woman he considered a second mother to his son really be medicating Finn without medical authorization? "Beverly, I need to know the truth. What medicine have you been giving Finn?" Tears began to form in the nanny's eyes. "Mr. Thorne, I can explain. It's not what you're thinking." "Then explain it to me. Now." The tension in the air was palpable as Beverly finally broke the silence, her voice coming out in broken whispers. "I was trying to protect him, Mr. Thorne. You don't understand. There are things you don't know about the family, about the past. I found out something terrible." Reginald felt the world spinning around him. Hazel's words echoed in his mind. The nanny was giving Finn medicine. But why? And what terrible secrets had Beverly discovered that would justify medicating a child without the father's knowledge? The businessman realized that his peaceful life in Albany was about to crumble completely, and that little Hazel had only been the first sign of a much larger storm approaching. Beverly wiped away the tears with the back of her hand, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Mrs. Meredith didn't die in that accident, Mr. Thorne. She's alive, in a private clinic for 3 years, and there's something very wrong happening there." Reginald felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Meredith alive? Impossible. He himself had attended the wake, seen the casket, cried at the gravesite. "Beverly, you're delirious. I buried my wife. I was there when it happened. You buried an empty casket, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Sterling took care of everything, didn't he? He organized the funeral. He brought the papers from the hospital." Beverly's voice trembled. "I found out by chance when I took Finn to a private consultation downtown 2 months ago. I saw her in a window of the St. Monica's clinic, Mr. Thorne. It's her, I'm sure. Sterling Abernathy, his 55-year-old financial manager, had indeed taken over all the bureaucratic procedures after the accident. Reginald was so devastated at the time that he accepted the help without question. Sterling had worked for him for 15 years. He was a man he trusted completely to take care of the financial aspects of his construction company. "This is impossible, Beverly. Why would Sterling do something like this?" The nanny looked nervously at the staircase leading to Finn's room before continuing. "Because he's been in love with Mrs. Meredith forever, Mr. Thorne. And because Finn will receive a very large inheritance when he turns 18, the inheritance that was supposed to be his mother's." Reginald collapsed into the armchair, trying to process the information. Meredith had inherited a considerable amount from her parents, which he had invested in his son's name. It was true that Finn would become very wealthy when he came of age. "Even if this is true, what does this have to do with you medicating my son?" "Because Finn started having strange nightmares a few months ago. He would wake up screaming, saying that Mom was trying to hurt him. Do you remember when he had those episodes?" Beverly approached, begging him to understand. "I looked for help, Mr. Thorne. I went after a psychiatrist who worked at the clinic where Mrs. Meredith is hospitalized." Reginald's heart raced. He vaguely remembered Finn's nightmares, but had attributed them to the stress of losing his mother, even 3 years later. "Which psychiatrist?" "Dr. Franklin Price. He told me terrible things. He said that Mrs. Meredith was hospitalized because she had a psychotic break and tried to hurt Finn before the accident. You were traveling for work, remember? That's why she left the house that night with the boy." Reginald's memory was struck like lightning. He had traveled to New York City that weekend to resolve problems with a construction project. Meredith seemed strange on the phone in their last conversation, but he attributed it to fatigue. When he received the call about the accident, Sterling told him that Meredith had lost control of the car on a dangerous curve. Dr. Price explained to me that some people develop disorders that can be hereditary, Beverly continued, her voice growing lower. He said that Finn could manifest the same symptoms as his mother when he grows up, especially if he is exposed to a lot of stress or remembers the traumas of that night. And the medicine? They are mild anti-anxiety medications, Mr. Thorne, just to keep Finn calm and prevent him from remembering things that could awaken the same problems as his mother. Dr. Price said it was temporary, only until he was older and strong enough to deal with the truth. Reginald stood up abruptly from the armchair, beginning to walk back and forth. "Why didn't you tell me this before? Why did you hide it from me?" Beverly lowered her head, tears starting to run down her face again. "Because Mr. Sterling forbade me. He said that if I told you anything, he would fire me and make sure I never got a job in Albany again. And I need this job, Mr. Thorne. After I lost my son—" "You had a son?" "Yes, 7 years ago. About the same age as Finn now." Beverly's voice broke completely. "He died of pneumonia because I didn't have money for proper treatment. When I started working here, I saw a second chance in Finn. I couldn't let anything bad happen to him, too." The revelation hit Reginald like an avalanche. Beverly had lost a son and saw Finn as a form of redemption. But her actions, even well-intentioned, put his son at risk. "Beverly, medication without proper medical prescription can be dangerous. I know, Mr. Thorne. That's why when that girl, Hazel, showed up here yesterday saying she saw strangers talking about Finn, I panicked." Reginald stopped walking. "Hazel was here?" "Yes. She said she saw a man and a woman talking in a black car near Finn's school. The woman looked like the photos of Mrs. Meredith that are around the house, and the man looked like Mr. Sterling." Beverly took a deep breath. "The girl said they were talking about taking Finn back." Reginald's blood ran cold. If Meredith was really alive and Sterling was involved in some scheme, Finn could be in real danger. "Where is this girl now?" "She lives with her grandmother near downtown. She said she works in a clinic, cleaning, and that's why she knows the hallways there. That's how she saw Mrs. Meredith." At that moment, Reginald's phone rang. It was Sterling. "Reginald, we need to talk urgently. There are some important financial issues about Finn's inheritance that can't wait." Reginald looked at Beverly, who had paled at the sound of Sterling's name. "I'm busy now, Sterling. We can talk tomorrow." "No, it needs to be today. I'm already on my way to your house." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. The call was ended, and the silence that followed was charged with tension. Beverly began to tremble visibly. "He's coming here to silence me, Mr. Thorne, or worse, to take Finn." "No one is taking my son," Reginald said, but his voice didn't sound as firm as he would have liked. "Beverly, I need you to tell me everything you know. Now, before Sterling gets here." The nanny took a deep breath, gathering courage. "Hazel isn't just a street kid, Mr. Thorne. Her grandmother, Josephine, worked at the St. Monica's clinic until she was fired 3 months ago for asking too many questions about the patients. Hazel sometimes went there with her and saw things she shouldn't have seen." "What kind of things?" "Patients being over-medicated to keep them quiet, documents being forged, and Mrs. Meredith being visited by Mr. Sterling every week, always with papers for her to sign." Beverly grabbed Reginald's arm. "The girl told me that Mrs. Meredith sometimes becomes lucid and asks about Finn, but soon after becomes drowsy again." The sound of a car pulling up outside made them both freeze. Sterling had arrived. Reginald looked out the window and saw his financial manager getting out of a black car, the same one Hazel had described. The man was carrying a briefcase of documents and had a determined look on his face. "Beverly, take Finn and go to his room. Lock the door and don't come out until I call you." Reginald whispered urgently, "and if anything happens to me, call the police." As Beverly ran upstairs, Reginald tried to organize his thoughts. In a few minutes, he had discovered that his wife might be alive, that his financial manager might be involved in a complex scheme, and that a 4-year-old knew secrets that could change everything. The doorbell rang, and Reginald knew that the next few minutes would define the fate of his family. Reginald opened the door with his heart pounding. Sterling Abernathy stood before him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, holding a brown leather briefcase and wearing an impeccable dark suit. The 55-year-old man had been his right hand in business for over a decade, but now Reginald observed him from a completely different perspective. "Reginald, you seem tense." "Problems at the downtown construction site?" Sterling asked, entering the house without waiting for an invitation. His eyes quickly scanned the room, as if looking for something or someone. "I'm fine, just tired. What's so urgent that it couldn't wait until tomorrow?" Sterling walked into the living room and placed the briefcase on the coffee table. "These are documents related to Finn's investment fund. There are some tax changes that need to be implemented before the end of the month to avoid losing money." He paused, his eyes fixing on the glass of chocolate milk that Reginald had left on the sideboard. "Didn't Finn have his snack today?" The seemingly innocent question made Reginald's hairs stand on end. "Not yet. He's playing in his room." "That's strange. Beverly is always so punctual with his schedules." Sterling opened the briefcase and took out several papers. "By the way, where is she? I need to talk to her too about the boy's medical expenses." "Medical expenses? What medical expenses?" Sterling raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "The consultations with the child psychiatrist, Reginald. You authorized the payments last month. Dr. Franklin Price, from St. Monica's Clinic, an excellent professional." Reginald felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Sterling not only knew the psychiatrist that Beverly had mentioned, but was also paying for the consultations. "I didn't authorize any consultation." "Of course you did. Your signature is here on the receipts." Sterling showed a series of documents with Reginald's signature. "Beverly brought them to me, worried about Finn's nightmares. She said you were too busy with the construction site and that she could take care of the details." Reginald examined the papers. They were convincing forgeries of his signature, but he was certain he had never signed those documents. "Sterling, I need to be direct with you. I suspect something wrong is happening with my son." Sterling's face showed no surprise at all. Instead, he leaned back on the sofa with a weary sigh. "Reginald, we've been friends for a long time. You know I've always had your family's best interests at heart. Then explain to me why Beverly is medicating my son without my knowledge." "Because you weren't in a condition to make rational decisions about Finn after losing Meredith," Sterling replied, with a coldness Reginald had never seen before. "You were completely lost, drinking too much, neglecting the business. Someone needed to take care of the child's well-being, and you decided that person was you." Sterling got up and walked to the window, watching the street. "Not just me, Meredith too." The silence that followed was deafening. Reginald felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What did you just say?" "Meredith is alive, Reginald, and she agreed to all of this." Reginald's legs weakened, and he needed to lean against the wall. "That's impossible." "I saw her body." "You saw what I wanted you to see," Sterling said, turning to face him. "Meredith had a severe psychotic break that night. She almost hurt Finn irreversibly. The accident was staged to protect everyone involved." "Staged?" "Meredith needed intensive psychiatric treatment. Albany society would never accept that the wife of the respected businessman Reginald Thorne had tried to harm her own son. It was better for everyone that she died and received treatment in secret." Reginald collapsed into the armchair, trying to process the magnitude of the revelation. "And you made this decision alone?" "Not alone. Meredith agreed when she was lucid. She knew she was dangerous to Finn in that state." Sterling sat down again, his voice taking on an almost paternal tone. I took care of everything, Reginald. I paid for the best private clinic, the best doctors. Meredith is getting the treatment she needs. For 3 years, her condition is complex. Sometimes she improves, sometimes she regresses. But in recent months, she has been asking a lot about Finn. Sterling paused, choosing his words carefully. She wants to see him. Anger began to rise in Reginald's chest. And you thought you had the right to decide whether or not she could see her own son. I have that right because I'm his father. The words came out of Sterling's mouth with shocking naturalness, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Reginald felt like he had been punched in the stomach. What did you say? Finn is my son, Reginald. Meredith and I had a relationship before she married you. When she found out she was pregnant, they had already been together for a few months, and she chose not to tell the truth. The room began to spin around Reginald. Finn was not his biological son. Meredith had lied to him for all these years, and Sterling had orchestrated everything. The fake accident, the secret hospitalization, even the boy's medication. Why are you telling me this now? Because Meredith wants custody of Finn back. She's better, more stable. And as the biological father, I have legal rights that I intend to exercise. Sterling opened the briefcase again and took out more documents. These are the custody transfer papers, a simple formality, considering the circumstances. Reginald looked at the papers without being able to focus on the words. Everything he had built, all the family he had loved, was based on lies. And if I refuse? Don't be irrational, Reginald. You raised Finn with love, and you will always be important in his life. But now that Meredith has recovered, it's natural that she wants her son back. Sterling leaned forward. Besides, consider the financial situation. As the biological father, I can guarantee that Finn has full access to his mother's inheritance when he comes of age. You mean if I don't agree, you'll cut off his access to the money? It doesn't have to be that way. Cooperation is always better than confrontation. At that moment, a soft noise came from upstairs, the sound of a door opening. Reginald looked up and saw Finn at the top of the stairs, looking down with curiosity. The boy had heard strange voices and come down to investigate. "Dad, who is this man?" Finn asked, descending a few steps. Sterling stood up with a smile that now seemed sinister. "Hello, Finn. I'm Sterling, your dad's friend. You know me from the pictures, remember?" Finn stopped on the stairs, his little face contorting into an expression of confusion and something like fear. "You're the man from the nightmares." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Sterling paled slightly, while Reginald felt a wave of paternal protection flood his chest. Finn remembered something, even with the medication. "What nightmares, son?" Reginald asked, climbing a few steps to get closer to the boy. "The man who made Mom cry, the man she was afraid of." Finn looked directly at Sterling. "You hurt her." Sterling took a step towards the stairs. "Finn, you're confusing things. Your mother was sick and I was trying to help her." "No!" Finn shouted, running into Reginald's arms. "You're bad! Beverly said you're bad!" Reginald hugged his son, feeling the small body tremble against his. It didn't matter who the biological father was. Finn was his son, in every aspect that really mattered. And now he understood that Beverly wasn't just medicating the child to keep him calm, but to protect him from traumatic memories involving Sterling. "Reginald, don't let the child get agitated like that," Sterling said, his mask of cordiality finally falling completely. "That's not good for his mental state." "Don't come near my son," Reginald said, his voice charged with an authority he hadn't felt in years. "Your son?" Sterling laughed bitterly. "Reginald, you need to accept reality. Finn was never your son. And Meredith never loved you as she should have. She was with me before, during, and after your marriage." The final revelation hit Reginald like lightning. Meredith had not only lied about Finn's paternity, but had also maintained a relationship with Sterling throughout the marriage. Everything had been an elaborate farce, and he had been just a puppet in the hands of two people he considered close. At that moment, Beverly appeared at the top of the stairs, holding something in her hand. "Mr. Thorne, I recorded everything." Beverly walked down the stairs slowly, holding her cell phone with trembling hands. "I've been recording since you arrived, Mr. Abernathy. Every word, every confession." Her tears flowed freely down her face. "I knew this day would come." Sterling took a step back, his face contorting in a mixture of anger and despair. "Beverly, you don't know what you're getting into. You're just a nanny. No one will believe your word against mine." "Yes, they will," said a small voice from the front door. Hazel was standing there, holding the hand of an elderly woman with white hair and kind eyes. "Grandma Josephine has pictures, lots of pictures." Josephine, 72, entered the house with determined steps, despite her age. Her sharp eyes scanned the scene: Reginald hugging Finn, Beverly with the cell phone, Sterling cornered in the room. "Reginald Thorne," she said, addressing the businessman with the familiarity of someone who has known the family for decades. "Your wife has been at St. Monica's clinic for 3 years, drugged until she can no longer think straight." "Who are you?" Reginald asked, without letting go of Finn. "I'm Josephine. I worked at that clinic until I was fired for asking too many questions. And this here is my granddaughter Hazel, who helped me with cleaning and saw things that a child shouldn't see." The elderly woman opened a worn bag and took out a yellowed envelope. "I have photographs of what happens inside and documents that this man forced your wife to sign." Sterling tried to approach the door, but Josephine blocked his path with surprising agility. "Not so fast, young man. You ruined the lives of many people, including my granddaughter, who had to see a mother being separated from her son." "Hazel," Reginald called softly, "can you tell us what you saw at the clinic?" The 4-year-old hid behind her grandmother's skirt before answering in her small voice. "The lady who looks like the pictures in the house always asked about the boy. She cried a lot and said she wanted to go home. But the man," she pointed at Sterling, "always brought papers for her to sign when she was very sleepy." Beverly approached Reginald, still holding the cell phone. "Mr. Thorne, I found out everything 2 months ago. That's why I started recording his conversations with me. He constantly threatened me, saying that if I told you anything, he would make me lose my job and never be able to work again." "But why did you give Finn the medicine if you knew it was wrong?" "Because," Beverly took a deep breath, "I found out that they weren't medicines to calm him down. They were to erase his memory. Dr. Franklin Price doesn't exist, Mr. Thorne. I made up that name so I didn't have to tell the horrible truth that I discovered." Reginald felt the world collapsing again. "What truth?" Mrs. Meredith never had a psychotic break. "She found out that Sterling was embezzling money from your company and her inheritance. When she threatened to tell, he drugged her and faked the accident." Beverly looked at Finn with affection. Finn saw everything that night. Saw Sterling forcing medicine on his mother, saw her being taken away against her will. That's why he had nightmares. Sterling exploded in fury. "Enough! You don't know anything. Meredith is mine, always has been mine. Reginald never deserved her, nor the money, nor anything." He turned to Reginald with pure hatred in his eyes. "You think you're better than everyone with your successful company, but I built all this. I made the contracts, I got the clients. And Meredith loved me before you showed up." "That doesn't justify what you did," Reginald said, his voice gaining strength for the first time in years. "Yes, it does. She was going to leave me for you, so I had to act." Sterling seemed completely out of control now. "The son isn't even yours anyway. Finn is my blood, my heir." Josephine stepped forward, taking more papers out of her bag. "Lies. The DNA tests you forged are here. Finn is Reginald's son. Meredith never had any relationship with you besides your sick obsession." The silence that followed was absolute. Sterling looked at the papers in Josephine's hands, his face paling progressively. "That's impossible. Meredith told me—" "Meredith never told you anything because she was always sedated when you visited her," Beverly interrupted. "I got the recordings from the clinic's security cameras through Josephine." "You talk to yourself, creating imaginary conversations with her." Finn moved in Reginald's arms, looking at Sterling with a clarity he hadn't shown in months. "You hurt my mum. I remember now. You gave her bad medicine and she fell asleep." The child's innocent confession was the final blow. Sterling collapsed on the sofa, completely defeated. "I just wanted her to be happy with me. I really loved her." "Love doesn't hurt," Hazel said with the surprising wisdom of her young age. "Love protects." Reginald looked at the little girl who had completely changed his life. "Hazel, why did you decide to tell me about the medicine?" "Because I saw the lady at the clinic asking about her son. She cried like I cried when Mom and Dad left." The girl approached timidly. "And because Grandma said that every child deserves to be with who loves them for real." Beverly knelt beside Finn, who had climbed out of his father's arms. "Finn, forgive me for giving you those medicines. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong." The boy looked at her with his big, wise eyes. "You wanted to take care of me, like you took care of your boy who went to heaven?" Beverly nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Then I forgive you, and you can keep taking care of me, okay?" 3 months later, St. Monica's clinic was closed for irregularities after an investigation revealed several cases of patients being kept unnecessarily sedated. Meredith returned home, her mind finally free of excessive medication, needing time to reconnect with reality, but showing daily improvement. Sterling faced the legal consequences of his acts: forgery of documents, embezzlement, and false imprisonment. During the process, it became clear that his obsession with Meredith had completely distorted his perception of reality. Reginald had rediscovered his love for life by having his family reunited again. Meredith, although still in the process of recovery, began to do family therapy together with him and Finn, rebuilding the bonds that excessive medication had broken. Beverly was officially adopted as a member of the family, receiving a small house on the property where she could maintain her independence while continuing to care for Finn. She had found peace in realizing that protecting a child did not mean hiding the truth from her, but rather offering genuine love and security. Hazel and Josephine were also welcomed by the family. Reginald enrolled Hazel in the same private school as Finn, where the two children developed a beautiful friendship based on their shared experiences of loss and recovery. Josephine found in Reginald's home the respect and affection she deserved in her old age. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, 6 months after that terrible day of revelations, Reginald's house was filled with laughter. Finn and Hazel played in the backyard, while Meredith, stronger every day, watched them from the porch next to her husband. Beverly prepared lunch in the kitchen, humming softly, and Josephine knitted in her favorite chair in the living room. "Dad," Finn said, running to hug Reginald, "now we are a giant family." Reginald smiled, hugging his son and extending his arm to include Hazel in the hug. "We are indeed, son, and no one will ever separate us again." Meredith approached, her hands still trembling, but her smile genuine. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered to her husband. "Family never gives up on family," Reginald replied, sealing with a kiss the promise that he would never again let fear and distrust separate the people he loved. And so, in Albany, a family that had been destroyed by lies and obsession found its redemption through the truth, forgiveness, and the courage of a 4-year-old girl who believed that every child deserved to be loved for real. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.